Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit the virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, David Levi, Chief Accounting Officer, Vonage. We are excited to have David and our panelists for a panel discussion titled Finding, Hiring, and Retaining the Best Finance Team. Welcome, David. Over to you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Appreciate the opportunity to present the subject here. Very important area of concern and opportunity. And I'm joined with three panelists, which I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But just generally, what are we talking about here? It's about how do we hire, retain, and develop our finance teams. How are we going to do that? What is happening? What happened over the last 3 years with COVID and all the problems that we've had to face as individuals, and with our families, but also at work? How did we engage? How did we continue to identify the right talent around the world? And what was some of those challenges been had, and how did we really at the end of the day, how did we figure out a way around the challenges? So I am going to let my panelists go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we'll get in on some of the questions we're going to pose. Michael, you want to start?
Yes. Thank you, David. And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Mance. I am the Vice President of Financial Operations at Dialysis Care Center, a medium-sized healthcare company located in the Chicagoland area. I have about 30 years of experience, cut my teeth originally in public accounting, both on audit and tax in various industries, and then have private industry experience for about 20 years, some consulting in various leadership roles. But I'm happy to be here, and thank you.
Carla, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Carla Rodriguez. I'm a CPA in the New York City area. I started my career about 20 years ago in public accounting at Ernst & Young. For the past 10 years, I've been in various financial leadership roles that focus on growth and transformation. I'm currently leading FP&A and financial reporting at a global commodities company in New York City, and I'm happy to be here today. Thanks.
Thanks, David. My name is Larry Mellon. I'm the tax director in the Chief Tax Office for Vertex Incorporated. Thank you for having me here. I've been at Vertex for 18 years. I've been involved in tax compliance for over 30 years, from everything from implementation to audit appeals. So I'm looking forward to this session.
Thank you, Larry. So let's get in on some of the discussion. There's a lot of ways we could take this discussion, and we've thought about what is the most important areas to focus on, and just generally we're going to focus on remote working and sort of what that means. We'll talk a little bit about how we engage with the whole organization, and we'll talk a little about some of the systems and automation that allow for teams to collaborate and work together. And then ultimately, what does this mean to the business? How does finance continue to engage with the business and stay relevant and stay connected? So I'm going to start off the discussion around remote working. And we all know over the last 3 or 4 years, I know in finance, I can tell you prior to COVID, none of us, I think, in finance would have said, oh, yeah, let's just work remote because that's the best way. None of us did that. But I can tell you right now, and I can tell you in my organization, we are fully remote. I know a lot of companies are hybrid, but it's difficult, especially when you have global teams. I know I have fairly significant teams in London. I have significant teams in Romania, and we're in places all over the country. So it makes it difficult. And so, Michael, it seems to me you've got an opportunity here to talk a little bit about what that meant for you and kind of what you did to manage those challenges.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, so here at DCC, we are in a hybrid role here. It's really enhanced the employees where they have the ability to work from home. It's enabled them to cut down on their commutes, and they have the option of coming in the office. We're about 50-50 as far as remotely coming into the office. I think it's provided more of a steady work-life balance for the individual employees. From my point of view, I believe communication is paramount, especially in the hybrid and remote settings. And, with my individual reports, I have one-on-one meetings with them on a weekly basis, go over kind of the game plan for the week and which days they're going to be in the office or not. And we take it from there. But it really is provided an additional perk and enhanced both retaining individuals as well as hiring as well, because a lot of individuals are looking for hybrid or fully remote. But it's worked out very well for us here.
Yeah. I think, David, that just to add on to that, so we are 100% remote and we don't plan to go back. They're looking at, for us, they're going to release the building. Like, we're not going to go back. Like, this is worked out. I think that one of the areas that we look at when we're hiring is that, many of us are when we have that, we're in the office every day, is we're limited to hiring the people that are within that driving distance from that area, right? We can now be in Pennsylvania and hire California or hire internationally to do that work. So I think some people look at that and say that's a positive thing, because now we can get talent wherever that talent may be and use that. And then there are some leaders that we know that are out there who are very much want to have people close by, right in hand, that they don't want to hire there. So to look at that and just kind of say, what are some of the best ways of looking at it? Even if you are in the office every day, being able to find someone that now is looking for that mixture and stuff, you've had better opportunities. And if you're able to hire somebody globally, you also have had advantage. So both of those are positive things. The only thing I see that's kind of the negative in that hiring of bringing somebody in versus that remote with COVID stuff is basically the leader themselves and how they're able to react. Just like Michael was saying, getting that one-on-one and working with them. I think it's up to us to kind of look at that as leaders and how we do that. I don't know if Carla, if you have any comments to add to that too.
Definitely, thanks. And I agree. I personally appreciate the hybrid model because of the flexibility, but I think it completely depends on the team as well. So throughout COVID and up to current, I've led several different teams because of some transformations my companies were going through or whatnot. And, regardless of generation, I've had people still enjoy coming to the office almost every day. So it's not just, I don't think it's just a generational thing. Some people are just kind of used to it. And even I have some entry level teams that, they're just getting to know work styles and supervisors and all different things. So they enjoy being in the office just as much as some of, my more seasoned staff and team members are. So I think it's kind of understanding. I think companies having that flexibility to offer flexible work environment, whether it's, hybrid or, with the remote option, or hybrid with the, 5 days in office. And I just think, again, it all comes down to the company being flexible and putting a pulse to, what is the need and what is driving the staff and the teams. And from that point, like I said, because I think I definitely see value in hybrid. I think, you have your time to, however you manage, whether it's, saving on your commute or managing your day better without interruptions to be remote, or, all the in-person meetings in the office. There's benefit to both sides. And again, I think the companies that are able to adapt and be flexible are the ones that are going to stay on top.
Not good, Carla, Lara. Larry and Michael, without a doubt, I see hybrid as a huge benefit. And quite frankly, you have a lot of employees who don't take jobs if you don't offer that at least hybrid model. And I've been in situations where you want somebody and they say, if you're not 100% hybrid, I've got other opportunities that I can move on with. The couple of negatives that I see, to be honest, although I do think it's tremendous, the lower level staff, the more junior people, I think they're missing out when they are fully remote. I don't think they have the supervision, the guidance, the development. I don't think they learn the soft skills. They don't get all of the gotta minutes and walk in sort of building relationships. They don't even get the experience of being able to build a relationship and what that means. So I've seen the lower staff, the junior staff, definitely struggle. And I've encouraged myself and my team to actually try to have some one-on-ones in the office when you can. A little bit of travel if you have to, but that's definitely something that needs to be focused on. We'll be here 5-10 years from now, and we'll have all the people that are going to replace me and us, and they won't necessarily have the same skill set we have, and so that is something that we need to work on. A question came up. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead,
No,
Larry.
very true. I agree with you
Yeah.
100%, David. It's definitely
Yeah.
true. And we're going to miss that because they're not getting that. I talk with people now who are new, and we do bring them in the office when we can, and they are from home. And you're right. They're missing all of that. And I think we all were big. Knock on the door. Hey, got a minute? Let's just get this done. I sent you an email 2 weeks ago. No, let's talk about it, and it's done. And they're not getting that. They're not having that.
The confidence to even just ask for the gotta minutes are tough when you have to get on Zoom and put a calendar entry in, and just for that 5 minutes, it's a whole different experience.
Yeah.
But a question did come up. I was kind of wait till the end, but I think that the question that came up, I think, is extremely relevant here. Is maybe even one of the negatives. As we think about how easy it is for us to look at the whole global talent pool. It's so easy for us to get online and for people to get online and find jobs. I think it has not only opened it up, but it also allows for more transitory relationships. And one of the questions that came up was, and there was an article that suggests that companies and people within the companies are actually going to go more contract workforce, and so I guess the stat was in the next 7 years, there'll be 50%, mostly contract workers. And I absolutely agree. I think that is where it's going. And I think there's already sort of an embedded sort of understanding that, hey, I'm going to take this job and, I'll be here for a year or two, but you know what, I'm going to look and continue to expand and develop my career as a contractor, because I can make, number one, potentially I can make more money, and two, I can learn new and different things. And so, yes, you do have the potential for not being able to get a job, but I just think the marketplace is so open at this point for people that have the experience and people that are good at what they do. And so this individual who asked the question is absolutely right. And I agree. And I do think it's going in that direction. Not everybody, but there's going to be a pool of people that continue to go around and just take on different jobs and, essentially be consultants for a lot of different companies rather than just one. So anyway, I don't know if anybody has any comments on that.
I just want to comment one thing. I talk about it like my parents would have, been in a company for 40 years. That's what they were taught. You go to a company, you stay. And then as I was coming up, it was like, you have to stay a while. Now you're hearing like, if you've done like 7 years, like, what are you doing there 7 years? You got to move on. So to your point with this comment on here, we are seeing that trending down, that it's get a little bit, move on, get a little bit, move on. So that's all I want to
Absolutely.
I think a lot of it's, different types of media streams where you see what else is out there and that you have options. I think potentially, back in the day, let's say,
newspaper.
Right, where it was like you said, you had your parents look at, well, they were there for 40 years or 20 years, and that's all you have to emulate. And now you see people, to use your words, David, they're transient, they're doing different things, they want a variety of different experiences, and they know they can get it. They know where to get it, they know how to get it. It's just, again, back in the day it was, this is what I'm doing every day. This is what my family does. This is what my neighbors do, and that's just what everyone does. And now, again, we have this opportunity for change and variety.
Yeah, thanks, Carla. So let's move on a little bit. So what does some of this mean as we think about how it impacts and challenges an organization? Carla, I'm going to direct this to you just to get your thoughts around this. But it's interesting given an FP&A background and FP&A responsibilities. You are engaging like we all do, but I think especially if you're in the budgeting and you're planning, you have to work with essentially every department, everybody in the company at some level. Everybody has a budget. Everybody has to have some level
It's
of
budget
constraint.
season.
And it's budget season. So, I thought it would be a good idea to get your thoughts on this. And, what does the culture look like? What's going on? How are you seeing the culture develop? What are companies doing to engage their employees? Yes, we're remote, but everybody still wants to engage. We want to feel part of the organization, and we want to engage. And, in a lot of ways, we have to engage because otherwise your budget's not going to be any good. But what are your thoughts?
So the funny thing that you say that, but I'm sure you can all relate. In the beginning of COVID, when it was like, oh, we have to be remote, how are we going to do this? I've led remote teams that were international before COVID, right? I've worked with different countries and different time zones, and we're never in the same place in the same time. And that's who I was working with for budgeting and financial reporting and even auditing and compliance, across, borders. So I think just a little bit more of the same, but it's different, right? So understanding when, you find someone, you're like, oh, you're in my office, or you're in New York, or, like, oh, have I seen you before? Have we passed each other? So I think there's a little bit of that dynamic, but like you mentioned about, some people wanting to meet, I think as much as people would be advocating for remote, people still like to meet in person. And, if we have the opportunity to do so, that's what we do. But I could be in the office with somebody and still just not meet with them. So, for budgeting and planning, a lot of the meetings we try to do on a day that we're in the office. If it's not, we make a Teams call. We use Teams, so we'll do that. The nice thing is, if we're in the office, it's face to face. We don't require video, so I do actually like that. To have your days at home, not having to do video, which is an option. So, but we meet every sort of way. But a lot of the communication is by email. So, that's another thing that, again, has always been and was before, like, remote work was, the thing and the big talk. But, it's just kind of communicating. And I think really for me is that kind of networking and getting to know someone and understanding, when you try to work with them and plan and have all these reporting initiatives, you could put it in an email, but, again, maybe back in the day, pick up a call, but, pick up the phone. And now it's, well, do you want to, get on a Zoom call, or are you in the office? Can we meet? So again, it's that kind of, are you in the office together or not? So there is a little bit more coordination for someone in your office. Again, for the people that, you manage that are internationally or in other offices, it's kind of more of the same.
Thank you, Carla.
Sure.
And I'll try to embellish some of or embed some of the questions that are coming. I find somebody asking, when do you start budgeting? The answer there, I think, is never early enough.
Yeah. So I think
But
before you go to that question real quick, David, I think that, part of what Carla was saying is key, but I think that some of this way we're supporting and developing this stuff is more on the leaders to be able to, as you said, we weren't working remote, right? So now the leaders have to be, industry and companies have to train leaders on how to lead remote people and hybrid people. So we got to make sure that they work, if you are a leader that's out there and you don't have that, then you need to probably step up and say, I should have significant type of training to lead in this new environment and learn from that so that you're successful.
Carla, I think you're right too. I mean, some of us have worked in global environments, and I do as well. I've always had remote teams, right? So you can go to the office, but half the people are always on video, and that's always been the case. I think what's different now is everyone's on video. So, but it gets a little bit more challenging. But I've always most of my team sits either in Romania or in London, or in some cases, in different different states within the country. So there's no question that you had to, and you always had to, and you still obviously have to. But I think what happens is, and we didn't really talk a lot about this, but it's the retention part.
Yeah.
So how do you continue to build the teams? Yes, you've got a bigger talent pool. Yes, everybody wants that flexibility of working remotely, and yes, people enjoy more video time. So you are engaging, but retention sometimes gets a little tough. You're not getting because you're not getting the one-on-ones live. You're not reading the room. You're not really feeling the stress necessarily, and so sometimes retention becomes difficult. And so you guys want to comment a little bit about how you're retaining your teams? And one of the cultural points was about engaging. So outside of work, are you getting together? Are you doing events? Are you trying to, even on video, but you do it outside of the work sort of agenda? And are we engaging in a way that we would have if we were live? And so the culture piece on retention through engagement, and just in general retention.
Yeah, so great question. So yeah, from investing in retaining key talent, what I do with my direct reports and the entire team is, besides the communication that we've been talking about here, whether it's in person, remote, Teams, Zoom calls, is, I think goals are very important still, utilizing SMART goals and having that direct line communication and retaining the individuals, but also on the investing in them. We are still doing in-person events. We do have quarterly awards to individual employees, both on the headquarters side and the operational side, being at the clinical level. And then investing in, whether it's continuing professional education, advanced degrees, continue, setting goals for people for promotional opportunities. I think those are always very important in employee recognition, especially employee recognition now in this remote and hybrid. So people don't kind of get lost in the shuffle. Specifically to your point, David, with the younger individuals, just making them feel part of the team and that you're investing in them as a leader.
One of the things that I've always done in my organization has continued that mentality is doing surveys. So, and I have to say, I'll be honest, over the last several years, although it's improved today, but over the last several years, they used to ask questions about engagement and how are you feeling as an employee? Do you feel like you are part of the organization and engaged by your leaders, by your peers, by the company overall? And it was pretty bad over the last few years. The engagement surveys, and it was actually a separate survey just for engagement. And it was bad. I mean, it went, people were very concerned about their health. People were very concerned about their families. They didn't want to go to the office. And in some cases, people didn't want to leave their homes, let alone go to the office. But the engagement surveys came back pretty negatively. And the company addressed it, and we did it very head on. We had, we were talking a little bit about training, but how do you engage globally? And there was training, and we had experts come in and talk a little bit about what you need to do differently in this environment. And talking a little bit about finding and retaining talent, one of the questions came up around are you seeing extending the corporate environment beyond? Of course, I mean, that's always been the case. But I do think outsourcing has become even more important these days. And the problem is even the outsourcers are remote. So I can tell you, when I went and outsourced almost half my staff, the lower level staff were outsourced, and we went to a company whose name shall remain nameless. But I have to tell you, their whole organization was remote. So you couldn't escape the remote environment, even by outsourcing. And then, it becomes difficult for them to retain, well, first find and then retain. So retaining employees is just as important as finding the right ones. And you have to work at it. It's not as easy to see necessarily when the engagement is becoming problematic. And so the surveys were absolutely a very good idea and really informative and surprising, because senior management, I got to tell you, we had no idea that sentiment, that mentality, that engagement lack was occurring. So it's important. We've just to move on. We talked a little bit about the tools that we use, and we talked about Zoom, we talked about Teams, and we all know what those video opportunities are. But there are many others, and I'm not going to go into which ones are better versus worse. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Use anything, anything that gets people to talk, whether it's online. And I know there's always a handful of people you get on these calls that turn their video off. And it's a little annoying. And I know some senior executives who actually call them out and just say, no, you have to be on video. That gets a little tough, because what if you're dealing with something? What if you're not feeling well? I mean, it gets personal sometimes. But I do think it's important for you to show your face and be on video. And it doesn't have to be on every call. But show your face, be part of the company, be part of the engagement that's going on. So the tools are important. And we talked a little bit about other kinds of tools, just our regular finance tools, the ERPs, the budgeting tools, all those things. I can tell you, when I got to my company, they were not on cloud. Everything was on-prem. And I shudder to the thought, had I not gone to the cloud before COVID hit, I don't know what we would have done. I mean, people would have had to work in an office somewhere, would have had entire IT support having to be on, on-prem. And so we went to the cloud, and that, those tools, while they don't necessarily create the engagement, it creates the opportunity for you to work remote, because approvals can happen, on the cloud. Everything gets consolidated and reported on the cloud. That doesn't mean it's the end all and be all, but the thought of having to book manual journal entries in an on-prem system, or to create your deferred tax process, Larry, from without, I mean, with Excel, that doesn't allow, at least Excel allows for the collaboration these days, right? So it's that kind of thing where everybody can work in the document together. So tools are important. Any thoughts, guys, on that?
Well, just think in general, David, as you're talking about this, think of all the companies when COVID hit, where they had people still working at a desktop, right? There were still companies who have you come in, if it happens, we have a center that we go to if we lose power, shut down something, right? Think of the companies that still today have that. Like, there's still companies where not every single employee has a laptop that's mobile. COVID changed that, where they had to have that, but there were still people who've done that. I worked for companies before we had laptops, 20 years ago, and they were like, well, this is your computer. You keep this with you all the time. And then they'd show up for work one day, and they're like, well, you should have got the email, said the office was closed, we didn't have power. Yeah, I had to come in and get my computer, because they didn't have it with them. So automation is key, especially now that we all want to have those tools. As much as the interactive tools of Teams and stuff like that, having the automated cloud information available we could sit here and say, my camera's got to go off, I don't have bandwidth, getting all those things set up to say I'm able to work from here was definitely management, and businesses had trouble with employees getting them all aligned to be able to work with them.
I don't want to say that it's an absolute necessity, but the reality is I actually believe it is. I mean, I don't know how you can operate today if you're not on cloud, if you don't have remote access, if you don't have a laptop, or even if you have a desktop, still accessing your company's systems. If you don't have those systems that you can access remotely, it's just impossible to do business. So it is a little crazy to think that some companies.
I think also talking about systems, like and the hiring pool, I think all the systems that we have to choose from now, it changes some of the skill set that we look for when we hire. Now it's someone that can make sure, they can handle heavy system and multiple systems and, you know, different type of systems for, you know, you mentioned the GL, the accounting system, you know, I'll talk more about the budget system and this, you know, someone that's agile and versatile to be able to move through different platforms, which is a different skill set than maybe, you know, would have been, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
And just, I mean, just look, I mean, the session, you know, CFO panel, like how many CFOs are tech people, right? You're people who've been in industry a long time and have a lot of skill set, but you may not have that technical. And you're like, you know, we're looking at stuff and saying, how do I do that? And somebody who's been there 5 years, like, here you go. It happens all the time.
It does. It does. So just moving on through the agenda, you know, one of the last sort of thought process here are around collaborating not only amongst ourselves and not only with other departments, but just in general. How does what's happening here impact our ability to do business? So we talk about how we engage, we talk about how we ultimately collaborate, but what about our customers? What about our vendors? What about all of the different consultants, lawyers, accountants, auditors? You know, if we think about all of the outside world that also has to collaborate and work, how are we seeing all of these, you know, hiring the right people, retaining the right people, and having and ensuring that they can engage at a level that requires them to be very mobile and global and quite frankly, you know, ready to deal with this remote process. Larry, I'm going to ask you to think about,
Sure.
you know, that process for us.
Yes, I think that, you know, to your point, I mean, each of these businesses all have their different limitations and what they can provide for you. So you may be the more advanced company that's purchasing, and you may be the more advanced company that's selling. So it's just how you work with those things and deal with those. So as leaders are looking at that, when how we're operating as a business, dealing with our customers, you know, and it's twofold. The vendors that are supplying us for the products and services that we're putting out, or potentially if we're a company that's building something, we're getting things that are going out there. So I think that some of those issues is you're learning from each of those groups what they have and how to navigate them. And as leaders, you know, we're looking at this and saying, how do we grow this? How do we collaborate? So we may have multiple companies or vendors or people that we're selling to that are on the same type of level of electronic age and what information they have, and we have to work with them to collaborate and bring those things in. But as far as hiring the people to deal with that, they have to have the technical knowledge, right, to be able to collaborate with these people globally on all the different systems and stuff that exist out there. And how do we keep these people? How do we educate more of our people to understand this stuff, to work with these customers on everything they have, different ERPs, electronically different stuff. So that becomes part of that question where we talk about hiring and are we seeing increased? Yes, it is increasing. And aligned with this stuff, it's increasing because we have to have different talented people to work through these things.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Larry. Also, you know, like from a vendor perspective, is how good is the vendor's communication? You know, whether it's email, Teams meetings, I think is very important, but also IT support. So if we have individuals that are remote, how can they help those individuals that are coming into the office, but more importantly, those individuals that are working remote somewhere? That's one big thing that we, you know, as we go through RFP processes, we do ask them what their game plan is with that, how they can reach out to us. And, you know, a lot of them are remote or hybrid, but ensuring that we have that customer support that we need from a vendor perspective.
Thanks, Michael. And Larry, I think those are absolutely valid points. Just going through the agenda and thinking about some of the questions coming up, you know, people are asking about increased talent pool. I think we covered that. There's no question that the talent pool is increased. There's no question that, you know, you have the opportunity to hire people anywhere in the world. But sometimes, again, cultures do clash. And so you can hire a really good person in another country who's very good at what they do, but they may not actually fit the culture. you also may not necessarily get the diversity that you're looking for. And a very valid question here is, how do you attract those diverse candidates? What is the most important? Are there criteria that you can think about that we can put on the requirements to make sure you're attracting the right diverse, cultured talent pool?
Yeah, I think that becomes part of our process as we develop what is the criteria to do that role, to make sure that we're very clear in identifying what do we need to make sure it does have a diverse, set of rules that are on there. So it's up to us to look at that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good point, Larry. From attracting top talent is, also I think it starts like really at the interview process as well, where traditionally companies have had 4, 5, 6 interviews. I just think that's just overkill. What I've incorporated here is, a single interview from the recruiting team. I'll talk to the individual, we'll have them come in and we're done. So it's really basically 2 interviews and we're making a decision versus dragging this out for a month or 2. Also, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think, is a big thing right now, attracting top talent, as well as, thinking about the different generations, whether it's Generation Z, we've talked about the younger talent pool, and then ESG, I think, is a big point as well now, as people are looking at companies, because now they have an opportunity to look at multiple companies across the globe versus in their, located geographically. So I think those are the top things that I've seen of late.
Great.
So yeah, that is great. I'm just looking at one of the questions. It's pretty funny. How do you measure a happy finance team? My usual answer to that is finance people are never happy. So
If you only see black numbers, I'm good. No red.
maybe I should say we're never happy enough.
Right.
But Larry, what I want to get your perspective on this. I
Yeah.
definitely want to get the others as well. I also run my tax department here as well. But
Yep.
And tax has a unique sort of position similar to FP&A, where you really do at some level have to interact with everybody in the company. And
Every
so,
person, you touch
yeah,
everything.
at some level, right? And so the question is, when you think about 3-4 years ago, and what that was like to try to get information, because you also need a lot of data from the business.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking internally, but it could be externally as well. Do you see a change in what it was like to get and interact and engage with the business itself?
Yeah.
3-4 years ago versus now? Have you seen a big change?
I think I see change. I think that to your point, tax, has to have a seat at the table, say, and there's nothing that happens in a business that doesn't hit tax, whether it be non-taxable transaction, it still has to have a tax implication to everything that you do. So I think that we are seeing that increasing where they're aware of that. I think that what happens is that, through COVID, we saw the downsides potentially of audits that were happening for tax, but we're seeing that increase. And I think tax professionals are getting smarter, where they're starting to say, we have to write a check for this on an audit because you're buying stuff that we don't know about, or you're putting capital improvements in place that we don't know about, So it really starts out by tax and finance getting together and saying, before you close a capital project, let us know to assess tax. Then it gets to the IT people. Before you buy something, let us see it. And now the audit committee is seeing a reserve that's booked. Let us talk to you before we have to put a reserve on. So all that stuff, to your point, David, which is a great point, that we are seeing the tax is trying to get to the table and letting the financial people understand that nothing happens without tax, that you are seeing your bottom line come down with expenses when you're tightening that up. Audits are coming down, risk is coming down because you're including tax. Yeah.
Carla, it's no different for you. How many times is your forecast off because the business didn't tell you about something?
Yep.
Exactly. It happens all the time. Yep. And like we said, we talk about budget and we're always asking, are we expecting anything new? And, you know, and you're forecasting and reforecasting. It's always, you know, are we missing anything? So absolutely.
Yeah, again, I'm looking at these questions. You know, when we get into these conversations about hiring pools and retention, it always ends up becoming a sort of a finance transformation conversation. People asking questions about, you know, about how you transform an organization and how you get to a good finance organization. But it is all connected, though. The people, when you say organization, when we talk about finance, this is still people. I mean, we're still people who live and breathe, and you know, even though we're only on a video screen, we still have lives, and we still want to be successful, and we want to be developed, and we want to engage and be part of the fabric of the company. And I don't think that's changed. You know, I think you do have a faction of the, as I said, the more junior people who don't even realize they need it. But other than that, I think it's just as important today than it's ever been. You know, how do you mitigate ghosting? You know, there was a lot of ghosting going on even when we were live. You know, there were a lot of people who used to come to meetings and didn't say anything, and quite frankly, were daydreaming. That's no different than turning your video off today and, you know, hoping that nobody realizes and sees that. So, you know, ghosting is an issue. But, you know, again, it's all about engagement. It's all, what's in it for me? Why should I come to that meeting? Keep the meetings short if you can. Keep the meetings on point. Keep the meetings relevant. Tell everybody what you're hoping to gain by, you know, attending these meetings, and I think you'll get a much better focused workforce. And the rest of this is transformation, so I'm not going to get into it, but you know, just in general, just we're getting close to the end here, and I just want to give everybody an opportunity for, you know, last words on just in general. Again, the topic here is about identifying, hiring, and retaining you know, good talent, and making sure your finance teams are of where they need to be. Michael, you want to start off?
Yeah, I think overarching, I think, you know, several of the things is just having the communication clear and concise, having those one-on-one meetings, you know, not just internally, but with your outside vendors and customers. Also, we've talked about, you know, getting the right people at the table, whether it's the FP&A side or the tax side. I think it's important to get all the key stakeholders involved from the inception versus at the last minute, because I think that leads to, you know, mistakes coming down the road, or tax consequences, for someone's budget's blown, et cetera, and how it's going to affect them. But, you know, investing and retaining individuals, making them feel part of the team, clear, concise communication, and what you're going to do to invest in those individuals, and what opportunities you're going to provide for them, you know, short term as well as long term. I think those are all key.
Right. Carla, you want to give us your
Sure.
final
So I want to
thoughts?
kind of also highlight what Larry had mentioned earlier on about leadership training and development. I think that's huge. But, you know, coupled with that is actually professional and personal development for staff, communication and transparency. I feel like it kind of all starts there with the communication, and, you know, find out what drives people and what are they here for, and how you can kind of help them marry their purpose within the organization. And then once you do that, you can help with the professional development for them. But some leaders don't understand how to do that. So that's where leadership development comes in. So it's kind of all hand in hand. You know, how can we make this better together, and how can we keep you happy? And when you have happy employees, the company succeeds. You have less turnover, more opportunity for growth and development and longevity within the company. And whether it's internal mobility or just advancement, it's just, you know, it creates a better environment, and for other people to look at as well, like not just for the individual, but hey, that's a role model. You know, I'd like to do that. I'd like to be where they are. And you know, the mentorship program as well can help, or sponsorship. So again, that I think there's a lot of things that can go hand in hand to help with retention.
Thanks, Carl. Go ahead, Larry. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, we talked a lot finding hire. I think I really want to focus a little bit on the retaining. I look at this and I say that, leaders have to train themselves and work with other people. I think that we've had through this COVID and stuff, we have a lot of leaders who have been picked as leaders that aren't necessarily the people that do the day-to-day operation or understand the day-to-day operation. It's an opportunity for you as a leader to let the people that are working with you, I don't want to say for you, I like to say these are the people that work with you, to cross-train, right? Switch jobs, change it up, let them learn what somebody else is doing, develop their skill, let them teach you something, right? We always say, what's that whole thing, like, you're hiring your replacement, stuff like that, that you're trying to build these people up. So allow them to act on that. Show the recognition that they're bringing more to the table. It's going to retain them, right? It gives them opportunity to be a part of that team and learn more from them. I think that more people, when they feel like they're part of a team and not working for their boss instead of with their boss, are more likely to retain and stay at a company than say, I'm looking for this more hybrid, more type of work environment where I get to be my own person. You can control that with what's going on right now with your people. I think that leaders really need to work on that retention.
Yeah, you're right. You're all right. And I think, the questions that the final questions that keep coming up are around this transient sort of mindset. I think the transient mindset, while it is starting to take hold a little bit, I think we can push back that tide. I think the engagement and, having people have a place where they feel secure, where they feel like they're being listened to, where they feel like they're part of the fabric of the organization. I think even if you have the ability to move on and take on other roles in other companies, I think you're going to think twice about it. If you're in a company where you think they're listening to you, and if you have potential opportunities in other departments or at a different level or for succession, growth, I think they will stay. I think you're going to see some of that tide go back the other way as we start to feel better about being in the environment and the company that we're with. And I think, hearing from senior management, every quarter, the CEO, CFO, all the senior leaders, we all get on we call it a town hall. And we talk about it, and it's become almost twice a quarter now, but that goes huge. When you're hearing directly from the CEO, what's going on, from the CFO, how are we doing, from the head of technology, how are we engaging and working towards a better sort of environment that's more secure from hackers and things like that. These are important things for people to hear. And I think you will see the tide turn a little bit and people want to stay. They want to be part. Now, they're not going to stay in the 40 years that our parents, stayed these days, but you're right. And you said 7 years, Larry. I think it's actually moving towards 5. I mean, every 5 years, people want to do something different.
Yep.
And I think we can stem that tide a little bit and maybe get to 7 or 8 if we make our employees feel good about themselves. Go ahead.
Depends if they want to stay to be vested. They want to put their 5 in. Depends. It all comes down to that too sometimes.
It does. Sometimes, stock options will vest in 3. And I got to tell you, we also provide longer term incentives where, if you stay the extra 2, you might get a little bit more. And so, money doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and I agree with you too. We have town halls too with CFO, everything you said, and they're perfect. Yeah. So thank you.
They're very important. Anybody else? Fine. Last words.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we're actually at time. Nicholas, do you want to take us back to close it out?
Sure. Absolutely. What a excellent panel discussion. Yeah. Thank you all for doing this. This was excellent. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. This officially concludes the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content. Have a great rest of your day.